Michaela Chester here with NCAA Digital. Today I am joined by Wayne Stats and Daniel Wilco. These two guys are bracket experts. They're on the NCAA team and have been tracking perfect brackets in the NCAA men's basketball tournament for a very long time. So pretty much experts in the field, and we're going to talk about the 2022 March Madness bracket. So this year, obviously, perfect brackets busted after 28 games. This is the second year we've had a 15 seed go on a run. I mean, no one got close to a perfect bracket. They went pretty fast after the first day. Stats, what were the numbers surrounding that?
Yeah, so we started with more than 20 million across major online games. So that's, Bracket Challenge Game, ESPN, CBS, and Yahoo, which is a lot. But as you said, when a 15 beats a 2, that's going to bring down a lot of people. I think one of my favorite stats from this year were 2 times as many people picked Kentucky to win the championship than picked St. Peter's to win one game. So just that fact alone is going to bring down a lot of people. Then you throw in 2 12 seeds winning that first day. So this is actually the second year in a row where we had the first day of the first round. We had a 15 beat a 2, and which helped bring down the total from above 20 million down to below 200. Mind you, that's through 16 games. We had less than 200 left 2 years in a row. And by that point, just the math is not very optimistic about how long it can go on, especially when there's more upsets that seem to happen the last few years. 12s over 5s, Abilene Christian in 2021. It makes it very exciting, but I'm sure it's almost impossible to pick correctly when, to start with, it's almost mathematically impossible to do it. It's great all seeing these people who picked St. Peter's or picked Richmond to win. It's almost like you want to know those stories because how the heck do you do that? But it also makes it harder for people to do that repeatedly for 63 games at a perfect bracket.
Yeah, I mean, is this year more common than not, or are the past 2 years kind of an anomaly? I mean, I know our best start was 49 for 49 in 2019, right, Wilco? I know you got a lot of data on the past years.
Yeah, so that was, we began tracking these a handful of years ago, and at that time, I think around 30 games was our record, and then luckily we were tracking in 2019 this man, Greg Nigel, he went 49 for 49, so the first ever Sweet 16 perfect, which would be 48 games in a row that we'd ever seen, went one game into the Elite Eight before, or into the Sweet 16 before that actually busted. And I mean, the thing about that year was it was pretty chalk. You had 2 regions that were the 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds all made the Sweet 16. The other regions, there was 1, 2, 3, and 5, and 1, 2, 3, and 12. So I mean, if you were going to go 49 for 49, that is a good year to do it. Still, picking those, there were still a handful of 12 seeds that won in the first round, plenty of upsets and 10 seeds. So not to take anything away from that achievement, it was unreal. I don't think we're going to see anything like that ever again. But yeah, we definitely didn't have any 15 seeds making the Sweet 16 as far as years to actually get 49 for 49. That was pretty chalk that year.
Yeah. And this year we had St. Peter's, just like Oral Roberts last year, but St. Peter's made it to the Elite Eight farther than Oral Roberts. Did more people pick them to make it that far?
So something we see a lot is with these smaller teams, and there are plenty of people who, for some reason or other, just pick all 16 seeds, go to the Final Four because maybe they're trying to come in last place in their bracket pool. But usually if a team gets picked, a 15 or 16 seed, to make it, multiple rounds, it's usually by some hardcore fans of either St. Peter's or Peacocks or whatever the mascot happens to be for that year, and they're going to ride with them all the way. So it's hard to track that data as people who are making really informed picks, because I don't know if there's a lot of information that would have led someone who is unbiased to picking St. Peter's to not only beat Kentucky but make it to the Sweet 16. So it's hard to track that and come out with any real conclusions from the data on that, but it's still fun to watch.
I like to imagine that the people that pick all these 16 seeds to it. So if it does happen, they can brag about it and hope that people don't ask them about the other 16 seeds. And then they say, oh, no, yeah. And they get caught in it trying to pick all 16.
Well, we saw plenty back when UMBC finally beat Virginia, finally pulled off a 16 seed upset. There were so many people bragging about being in the under 2% of people that picked that particular 16 seed to win. And yeah, none of them were bragging about having also picked 3 other 16 seeds to win, even though 16 seeds are now 1 in like 143, I think. So, yeah.
So how many people actually picked the Final Four correct this year? I mean, we don't have a chalk Final Four at all.
No, we're at 0.1, a little less than that, but I rounded up to so it looks better. 0.1% of users went 444, which is very low when you think about the teams involved. Very popular, big programs that have won. All 4 Final Four teams have won at least 3 national championships. So it's a lot of titles that spread out among the 4 of them. Duke, Kansas, UNC, and Villanova. So you'd think that would mean a lot of people went 4 for 4. But the thing is, even though there's 1s and 2 seeds in there, the 4th one, North Carolina, is an 8 seed, which is going to bring down the average a lot. Especially when 8 seeds, just by how the bracket works, unless you're getting UMBC, an 8 seed is going to have to beat a 1 seed in the second round and then win 2 more games just to get to the Final Four. So I think that alone kind of like makes you kind of take restock of it. Because when I saw that number, I said, that can't be right. That seems such a small number for these big programs. When you think of that, you have to go 4 for 4 so that one team can really make a big difference, which is kind of a fun way to see it. Because you would think it'd be higher than that considering the big name success and the history that they have. But that's the fun of this.
Yeah.
There are definitely some stats backing that up as well, because 8 seeds have been to, I think, 5 Final Fours ever. And of course, and all these stats are going back to 1985 when the tournament actually went to 64 teams. And that very first year, 8 seed Villanova beat 1 seed Georgetown and is still now the lowest seed to have ever won the national championship. They were the only 8 seed to have ever won. 2 other, I think Butler and Kentucky both also went to the championship games as 8 seeds and lost. But yes, it's UNC, and like you're saying, I mean, people who may not have been following the college basketball season might see UNC as just a great sleeper pick as an 8 seed, but that path is super tough to go through. Their first round matchup is as tough as it gets for highly ranked teams, and then to go through a 1 seed and then again continue to win game after game in a row with no room for error there. It's tough for them, and there's not a lot of data backing up picking an 8 seed to go to the Final Four.
Yeah, and one thing I thought too was Duke is always every year going to be one of those popular picks. So you would think when Duke is a 2 seed, that would mean a lot of people got it right. But I think what threw people off this year was Duke was paired with the same region, at least, with #1 overall seed. Doesn't mean that they would have beaten Gonzaga, but Gonzaga's presence in their region, I think, probably made Duke as a 2 seed less popular than it would have been if they were paired with, someone else or a different year. About a little less than a third of our brackets had Gonzaga winning the championship. So, and that doesn't mean that the other 2/3 picked Duke to make the Final Four either. A lot of those could have Gonzaga losing the title game or losing the Final Four. So I think it was like a little over 70% picked Duke to make the Final Four, which is high. It's not a low number. But when you think of how popular Duke is, the narrative around Coach K, they were a 2 seed, wasn't they were a 7 seed. You would think it'd be higher, but I think Gonzaga's presence in that region, I think, really made people a little more hesitant than they would have. But as we saw how it turned out, Arkansas had something to say about Gonzaga there.
Yeah, so we've got an 8 seed in the Final Four, but also just only 1 seed. Is that pretty typical, or is that something I'm sure that affected a lot of brackets that go with a lot more 1 seeds.
Yeah, so surprisingly, it is pretty typical. So we definitely see 1 seeds when we go by pick percentage for seeds. All of our top 4 are always 1 seeds in the bracket challenge game. People love a 1 seed. It makes sense. They have supposedly the easiest road to the championship. They are supposed to be the best teams, but like we've seen, it's why we all love this tournament. Anything can happen in March, not just losing to a 16 seed in the first round, but you've got to make it through a handful of other games just to even get to the Final Four. So all 4 1 seeds have only ever made the tournament 1 time, or the Final Four 1 time. And we've seen just one seed or fewer make it about half the time. So it's really more likely than not that one seed is the only one to survive to this point.
Yeah, so I want to really get into the nitty gritty here. I'm sure you guys know it. This might be a tough one, but how do the actual seeds fare in the Final Four? We've got an 8 seed in the Final Four, 2 seeds, 1 seed. How do they fare in the Final Four in years past? Do we have numbers on that?
Yeah, so 8 seeds, obviously the most interesting one of all of those. They've only made the Final Four 5 times. UNC actually was an 8 seed that made the Final Four back in 2000, played against Florida and then lost, sadly. But they are, so overall, 8 seeds are 3-2 in the Final Four. And then 1-2 in the championship game. That one win coming from Villanova back in 1985, and then Kentucky and Butler both made the championship games and lost as an 8 seed. And then fun fact for any UNC fans out there, 2 seeds are actually just 13 and 17 in the Final Four. So obviously a much larger sample size there. But if you're just going based on numbers, maybe there's some hope for UNC fans. And then 1 seeds are obviously they've been there the most. They are 36 and 23 in the Final Four, so a pretty strong record right there.
Yeah, a little shout out there, Wilco, a little UNC alumni over here. Just want to throw that out there. So he likes those stats.
Yeah, it's hard to hide that fandom for too long when we're talking about brackets where UNC makes it to the Final Four. So.
So I've got to ask this, and this is not because I picked this in the national championship game, but I feel like everybody had some variation of Gonzaga and Arizona in the title game. I mean, am I wrong? Is that just bias? Like, I feel like that was the way to go this year, and it's just totally off.
Yeah, I mean, those two were our top 2 champion picks by far. And actually, we were looking at the breakdowns of the most common Final Four lineups along brackets. You have to go down to the 8th most popular lineup before you have one that doesn't include both Gonzaga and Arizona. You have to go down to the 30th most popular before you have a Final Four that is popular enough to have and has neither Gonzaga nor Arizona in the Final Four. So yeah, people were pretty keen on them. And Arizona not even making the Sweet 16, Gonzaga not making the Final Four was a big blow to a lot of brackets.
So them two being out of the Final Four has to be just a huge part of the perfect Final Fours being under 0.01%.
Oh yeah. I mean, anytime the most popular team to win the title is about a third, that alone is going to really hurt a lot of people. Then you try to hit on everybody else. The pool gets that much smaller when the most popular team's out. And this is even the most popular one we've had. Gonzaga last year was even more popular to win the championship. When Kentucky was undefeated, they were above 40%, almost 50%. Which when you think about it makes sense, but it's also crazy to tell you how popular the most popular team is, even when it's not an undefeated team. Being that top left spot is a big draw for a lot of people, and rightfully so. I mean, the number 1 overall seed for a reason. It's just hard to win a national championship every year.
And I'm just asking this out of curiosity. This is totally kind of irrelevant, but what would your points be if you only picked the Final Four correctly and that's it? Because I'm wondering if this should be a new tactic of mine.
Yeah. If you somehow manage to do that, which honestly might be more impressive than getting a perfect Final Four, just picking all 4 of those and only those teams to win their games, it's about 60 points, which right now would be in the 85th percentile of Bracket Challenge Game users, which is better than most of my brackets ever do.
Oh, yeah.
So, props to you if you can manage that.
Yeah, I don't want to tell you guys what my bracket points are at this year. Okay, so out of those that picked the Final Four correct, are there national champion picks kind of spread across the board, or is there a way for you guys to tell what percentage of the people that picked the Final Four correctly picked each team to win?
Yeah, so we pulled that up. It's actually surprising. Kansas, the one seed left, is the least picked team to win the Final Four, or to win the championship out of the teams who got a perfect Final Four. So about 15% of the users that got a perfect Final Four picked Kansas, 18% picked Villanova, 24% picked UNC because about at that point, if you're riding with UNC as an 8 seed to make the Final Four, you might be a little biased, or you just really believe in them. And then 43% picked Duke to win it all.
Okay, so stats, I want to go to you on this with Duke being 43%. I know we've talked about this before. Does that make sense to you? I mean, you start to think about their path to the national championship game. How does that make sense?
Yeah, so if you go by the overall percentages of everybody, not just the perfect Final Four people, which if you got 4 for 4, I'd brag about this forever. But if you went to the entire BCG people, about 42% of them picked Kansas to make it, which is a pretty big number. Only 17 picked Duke. But when you think about how would that have flipped the opposite direction almost, why would Duke be number the most popular one? Wilco kind of hinted this before with UNC. Like, if you're picking Duke to get out of that region, which included Gonzaga, you're probably not going to stop them in the Final Four national championship, especially when a lot of these are probably Duke fans or want to see Coach K go out as a national champion. Same thing with UNC. Like, if you picked UNC, only less than 3%, a little more than 3% picked UNC to make the Final Four. But if you dig down those numbers, those are probably heavy UNC fans. Again, if you're going that far, why stop there? If anything, those would be the most interesting stories, I think, would be the people who picked UNC to make the Final Four, and then why they picked them to stop there. I like to imagine there's like some weirdness where it's a Duke fan doing this, and they want to embarrass UNC in the Final Four to get revenge on them. Maybe that's just a conspiracy for bracket pickers. But it's always fascinating how the numbers can change depending on the pool of people you're dealing with. Whether a pool of like millions of people down to 0.1%, the makeup of that population is going to change a lot. Whether it's fans of the teams or people who are more in it in general, like they have no favorites, they just like basketball. You're getting different viewpoints on that one. And of course, all this, and we barely talked about Villanova, the team that's going for 3 titles in the last 5-6 years. Yeah. It just kind of goes to show how consistently they've been, that they make the Final Four is almost like a shrug for a lot of people, which is really impressive. But I'm sure they don't mind the attention elsewhere. They'll probably just keep on winning.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we don't have the numbers on this, but I can't imagine they're very high of the odds of having an all-blue Final Four. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we definitely did back in the day. We played around with the idea. We know a lot of people who make March Madness brackets aren't necessarily diehard college basketball fans and taking into the numbers. We played around with picking these Euro brackets based on either mascots, which mascot would win in a fight, or colors, which is definitely something everyone does. Blue teams are ridiculously good at college basketball. There's a reason that everyone knows about blue bloods. So I don't know what the stats would be for all 4 of them making the Final Four, but if you want to pick based on numbers, blue is definitely a safe bet.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for breaking all this down. I know it's a lot of fun talking brackets, but I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Miguel.